People think they know what betrayal looks like. That it kicks the door down, tosses a suitcase on the bed, and screams in your face. But the real thing, it's quiet. It blends in. It waters the plants, pays the gas bill, and texts you to pick up oat milk. You don't see it coming because you're too busy living next to it. Margaret and I met in a Target parking lot. I know, not romantic, but it's the kind of story we told like it was cute. She clipped my bumper while I was pulling into a spot. We argued for 3 minutes, then laughed for the next 10. She had this smile like she knew things before you said them. That smile became my problem before I realized it. We got married 6 years ago in June, in a backyard with folding chairs and the kind of optimism you only have once. No band, just a Bluetooth speaker and a playlist that aged like a college tattoo, fast and poorly. But I loved her. Even when she got weird about my mom, even when she couldn't stand the way I folded towels inside out, still don't know what that means, even when she rolled her eyes every time I said, "Let's just stay in tonight." I loved her through all of it. She worked in community development. Fancy way of saying she went to meetings where people argued about zoning like it was a matter of national security. She had work dinners, networking things, the occasional overnight conference in Indianapolis or Denver. She was the smart one, the sharp one. I was the guy who kept our roof from caving in and knew how to fix a garbage disposal without Googling it. For the last year, things had been off. Not big stuff. Small stuff, annoying stuff. The kind of stuff that feels like static until it's all you hear. She started going to bed early. Real early. Like, light still out, early. She always seemed half there at dinner. If I asked how her day was, I got words, but not answers. Then came the weird one. She forgot my sister's birthday. Margaret never forgets anything. That's her thing, she's the rememberer. When I brought it up, she said, "Oh wow, really?" Like I'd reminded her we were out of peanut butter. I didn't accuse her of anything. You don't just throw a grenade into your marriage because someone bought the wrong toothpaste twice. But I did start paying attention. And the more I watched, the more I saw her moving around me like someone trying to find the exit in a dark room. She started volunteering at this new nonprofit that hosted free legal workshops. Just 3 evenings a month, she said. I think it's good to get out of the house. I agreed, until she started going 4, 5 times. Some nights she didn't even come back until 11. Always with the same line. "Sorry, we ran late." The nonprofit didn't even have a website. I looked. But again, I waited. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was just bored. I mean, I'd always heard marriage settles into something less exciting, more routine. Maybe I was just romanticizing the chaos of early love. Then, last week, I got an envelope in the mail. It was addressed to me but had Margaret's handwriting on the return address. That alone made no sense. Why would my wife mail something to me from our own house? Inside, there was nothing but a postcard. Blank. Just an old photo of Cleveland's skyline and the word "someday" printed in blocky type. It was taped to a yellow sticky note that said, "File with the Ridgeway portfolio." Now, here's the thing. I don't have a Ridgeway portfolio. I don't even know what a Ridgeway is. But I work in real estate, and I keep all our contracts and legal docs in a filing cabinet in the home office. That night, after Margaret went to bed, early, I started digging through it. And there it was, tucked between some insurance papers and old tax forms, a manila folder with Ridgeway printed across the tab in black Sharpie. I opened it and found something that stopped my breath cold. Inside were 12 monthly invoices, all labeled consulting services, all made out to James Holloway. Not a familiar name. The services were vague: strategic planning, logistical consulting, meeting facilitation, but each invoice was signed by Margaret K. Wilburn. And each one was marked as paid in full. Now here's where it gets strange. The payments weren't coming from any of our joint accounts. They were made via money orders. Every month. Different addresses. Sometimes Cleveland. Sometimes Detroit. Once, weirdly, Boise. Who sends consulting money by money order? And why file the whole thing under a fake name? That's when I knew something wasn't just wrong. It was orchestrated. I didn't sleep that night. I watched her as she turned in bed, pulling the comforter around her like she had secrets to keep warm. And I remember thinking, this isn't a phase. This is a person who is already gone. And now I'm playing a part one didn't audition for. The oblivious husband. The guy who'll smile through it, ask her if she wants coffee, fold the towels, write, and wait. Because the thing about betrayal is, once you hear the first note, you realize the song's been playing in the background for a while. And I'm almost ready to change the station. If you told me that I'd discover my wife's affair because of a broken office printer, I'd have laughed in your face. But that's exactly how it went down. Not her phone, not lipstick on a collar, not some anonymous message from a stranger in the middle of the night. Nope. A Canon all-in-one that jammed on a Tuesday. It was around 6:45 p.m. I had stayed late at the office because I had to rework a pitch deck. My intern, Kyle, had forgotten to send over some updated floor plans, and instead of waiting until morning, I figured I'd just knock it out that night and have it ready for our 9 a.m. Margaret was supposed to be out volunteering again that evening. Same nonprofit that didn't exist online, still no public record of its events, and yet somehow it had her busier than her actual job. I wasn't suspicious that night. Just tired. I clicked print and waited. Nothing. Just the software of a printer trying its hardest to sound busy. Then an error message blinked on. Paper jam in tray 1. I opened the tray, pulled out the half-crumpled sheet, and that's when it hit me. It wasn't my print job. It was already there, wedged halfway through the feed like it had gotten stuck before I ever hit print. I unfolded it, expecting maybe some old spreadsheet or office memo. It was neither. It was a document. A letter. On letterhead I didn't recognize. Ridgeway Collaborative. The letter was addressed to a Mr. James Holloway, the same name I'd seen on those invoices at home. The body of the letter was short and loaded with just enough vagueness to make my skin crawl. Dear James, thank you again for your discretion and commitment over these past few months. Our continued arrangement has been beneficial in ways I did not expect, both professionally and personally. Let's continue keeping our communication through the Dropbox folder only. I've updated it with next month's materials. As always, destroy after reading. M. Margaret. Margaret K. Wilburn. She was the only M I knew that could write like that. I stood there holding the paper, heart thudding like I just sprinted 3 blocks. I read it again, then a third time. It had no return address, no signatures, but the wording, God, the wording. That wasn't corporate. That was intimate, dressed and business casual. I looked over at the print queue on my computer. Nothing. The job had come from a different machine, one used by our shared admin team. Maybe she'd used my office printer accidentally while working remotely, but she wasn't supposed to be using our systems at all. She had her own office job. Why would she be printing anything from my building? I checked the job history on the network. That's where it all clicked. The document was sent by a user named Marg_Will. Not only was that Margaret's exact work username, but it was tied to an IP address that matched the Wi-Fi she sometimes used when she worked remotely from our house. So, to recap, Margaret was using her work laptop on our home Wi-Fi, accessing a document labeled under a fake collaborative company that didn't exist, writing letters to a James Holloway, and printing them, accidentally, to my office. That's not sloppy cheating. That's someone who got so used to getting away with it. She stopped trying to hide the fingerprints. I drove home in silence. No music. No podcast. Just the rhythm of tires and the buzz of fluorescent guilt unraveling in my head. Margaret was already home when I walked in. Still in her button-down and dark jeans, barefoot in the kitchen, scrolling something on her tablet. She looked up and gave me that distracted smile. Hey, I thought you were staying late. I did. Oh, everything okay? There it was. The question. So simple. So loaded. Yeah, I said, tossing my keys in the bowl by the door. Printer broke. Ended up troubleshooting for half an hour. Ugh, that old thing's a nightmare. That's when I noticed something. She had a folder sitting on the counter, half tucked under her planner. It said RC meeting notes. I played dumb and opened the fridge. RC. Ridgeway Collaborative. Not just in the printer jam. Not just on the invoice folder. It was real, or at least real enough for her to slap initials on a meeting binder. And she'd left it out. Bold move. Or careless. Or maybe she just thought I'd never look. I waited until she went upstairs to shower. Then I took the folder. Slid it out from under her planner like a magician palming a card. Walked it to the garage. Opened it. Inside was a mess. Scribbled notes, diagrams, a few attendance sheets with names I didn't recognize. And tucked in the very back, a list, typed, neat, printed on standard white paper. At the top, Ridgeway Collaborative Private Session Roster. Underneath, a list of first names, last initials, and dates. The same date repeated every Tuesday night for the past 3 months. And right there, at the very bottom, James H. confirmed. That was the name. The one from the invoices. From the letter. And now from a secret roster of something Margaret was clearly not being honest about. But here's the kicker. 2 names below his was a familiar one. Very familiar. Tessa G. Tentative. Tessa Gilroy. Margaret's old college roommate. A woman she once told me was too intense to be around. Drama magnet, she'd said. Always chasing the next chaotic man. We hadn't seen Tessa in years. Not even a Christmas card. And now suddenly she was attending the same mysterious sessions as Margaret and this James guy? It was too much coincidence for coincidence. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Margaret, who turned toward the wall like she always did, breathing soft and slow, dreaming whatever dreams cheaters have when they think they're clever. At 3:17 a.m., I got up, quiet as a ghost. I pulled my laptop out and typed Ridgeway Collaborative into every search engine I could find. Nothing. Except one thing. A single hit. Not a business listing. Not a social media page. But a comment thread on a public forum, buried in a long discussion about fake consulting firms used in divorce cover-ups. One user had written, "If your spouse is using a collaborative consulting setup with no website and vague invoices, check your local courthouse records." These setups are often covers for discrete romantic arrangements, usually protected by shell entities. Romantic arrangements. Shell entities. You don't need a neon sign when the receipts are that loud. At 6:41 a.m., I called in sick. By 9:15 a.m., I was at the county clerk's office, digging through public records. And sure enough, there it was. Filed 6 months ago under business registry filings. Ridgeway Collaborative LLC, registered agent, James Holloway. Mailing address P.O. Box 3093. And under operating officers? Margaret Wilburn, program lead. No mention of it in our taxes. No deposit slips in our bank records. She created an entire legal entity without saying a word. Not a consulting gig. Not volunteer work. A company. A company where her co-founder just happened to receive secret letters signed only with an M. And here's where my heart snapped clean in half. Under the list of company beneficiaries, it listed 2 separate bank accounts. One under Holloway. The other? A joint account held with Tessa Gilroy. Not Margaret. Tessa. That's how I found out. Not through a text. Not from a confession. Not because she got sloppy with her phone. Because of a busted printer and a network name she forgot to log out of. Turns out, the woman I married wasn't just having an affair. She was running a private business with her college roommate and some guy named James. And they'd kept me out of it, until a $99 Canon had something else to say. You'd think when a man finds out his wife's been running a secret business with her college bestie and a mystery man named James, he'd go nuclear. Throw clothes on the lawn. Smash a plate or 2 for dramatic effect. But that's not how I operate. That's not how Margaret trained me. See, when you're married to someone who weaponizes calm, you learn to play in that same quiet league. She never shouted. Never slammed a door. Margaret specialized in disappointment you had to read in subtext. So when it was my turn, I kept it measured. Professional. Like I was filing a report on my own demise. I didn't confront her that day. Or the day after. I watched her. Tuesday night came, and surprise, she had another Ridgeway session. Said she'd be home by 10. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and told her to have a good session, which nearly made me choke on my own teeth. She smiled like it was any other night, like we were still some suburban power couple with matching mugs and synchronized calendars. The moment she left, I followed. Not right away, of course. I gave her a 15-minute lead, then took my car and stayed back 2 blocks. Her GPS pinged to an address I hadn't seen before, an office space over on Carpenter Lane. A real building, tucked behind a payday loan store and a frozen yogurt place that had gone out of business last winter. Nothing fancy. No signage. Just a keypad door and tinted windows. I parked across the street. Waited. 10 minutes passed. Then I saw her. She pulled up and walked in like she owned the place. Black tote bag slung over her shoulder. That same calm, practiced stride. She didn't even check behind her. Another car pulled up 2 minutes later. Gray Jeep. Plates from Ohio. A guy in his 40s, lean, tan, probably the gym at lunch type. He had the kind of walk that said, "I've been getting away with this for a while." He went inside without knocking. James, I assumed. I waited another 5. Then I got out and crossed the street like I just remembered I worked there. The keypad door was open. Someone had left it cracked. Idiots. The inside was small. Lobby area with fake plants, a Keurig with a sad stack of paper cups, and a hallway with 4 office doors. One of them had a light on. Voices. I stepped closer, phone recording in my pocket, just in case this whole thing went sideways and I needed receipts. Margaret was talking. Confident. Relaxed. Tessa said she can't make the next two, but she'll finalize the transfer before Friday, she was saying. Then a man, James, responded. She's dragging her feet. We can't afford delays if we want to hit June's disbursement. I know, Margaret said, but she's handling the contractor stuff, and we need that cleared. Then came the zinger. She's not the one sleeping with her husband every night, James said, chuckling. If anyone's close enough to keep him off our scent, it's you. Margaret laughed. Andrew's harmless. That one hit me like a bullet between the ribs. Harmless. Like a toddler with a crayon. Like a dog that doesn't bite. My brain lit up like a slot machine. Every moment I'd ever second-guessed myself. Every conversation I thought was innocent. Every Tuesday night. I stepped into the doorway. Evening, I said, calm as glass. They both froze. Margaret's mouth dropped first, then snapped shut. James looked like he'd swallowed a stapler. Andrew, she said, standing so fast her chair screeched. What are you doing here? Thought I'd drop in on this little think tank, I said, gesturing around the room. See where all the Ridgeway magic happens. James stood, not sure if he should act casual or bold. He chose casual. Bad choice. We're in a private meeting, he said, putting a hand on the desk like he owned it. And you are? I asked. James Holloway. Of course you are. Margaret stepped in. Andrew, this is. I mean, we've talked about Ridgeway. You know I do work here. No. See, that's where you're wrong. I cut in. You told me you volunteered at a nonprofit. You didn't mention an LLC with a bank account, a registered address, and a paper trail a mile wide. James cleared his throat. Look, maybe this isn't the best place. Oh, it's the perfect place, I said, staring at Margaret. This is where you play pretend. Where you and your little friend cook up invoices and send cryptic letters and run sessions that somehow require you to be out of the house 4 nights a week. Her eyes flicked to the side. She was calculating. Margaret was always calculating. Never cried, never begged. Just moved the chess pieces. You've been watching me. Not as closely as I should have, I said. But the printer helped. She blinked. The printer. The one that spit out your love letter to James. Right into my hands. James shifted, finally sitting down, realizing he was no longer part of the main event. This isn't what you think, Margaret said carefully. No? Because I think it's exactly what it looks like. You and your co-founder here, running God knows what kind of operation, funneling funds through an LLC you never disclosed, and using Tuesday nights as a cover to meet with a man who signs invoices like he's your business partner and boyfriend in one. That's not it. Don't insult my intelligence, Margaret. I've seen the filings. I've seen the bank statements. I've seen the damn roster with your college roommate on it. You didn't even change your signature. She looked at James. He looked at the floor. I stepped forward, calm as ever. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave the house. Tonight. You're going to stay somewhere else. And I'm going to dig into Ridgeway with a shovel and a flashlight. Every document, every transfer, every client, every service you've provided. If I find anything that smells even remotely like fraud, I'm reporting it. To the IRS, to the Attorney General, to whoever picks up the phone first. Margaret's mouth tightened. You think I'd risk? You already did. You just thought I wouldn't notice. Because I'm harmless, right? Silence. I turned to James. You've got 30 seconds to make yourself scarce, or I call building security and say you're trespassing. And you better pray Margaret's smart enough to have kept your name off anything prosecutable. He stood, grabbed his coat, and left without a word. I turned back to Margaret. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Why didn't you just ask me? She said, her voice low. Because I already knew, I said. And because I wanted to see how long you'd keep lying before you ran out of oxygen. Then I walked out. Didn't slam the door. Didn't look back. Just left her standing there in that tiny office that smelled like coffee and betrayal, holding a life she thought I'd never be smart enough to unravel. You ever get to a point where your rage gets so organized, it starts making to-do lists? That was me on the morning after the confrontation. I woke up before the alarm. Margaret hadn't come home, just like I told her. There was no note, no text, no dramatic 2 a.m. apology call. She didn't even try to explain it away, which, honestly, hurt more than if she had. That silence told me she wasn't shocked that I'd left. Just annoyed the game had finally been interrupted. So I made a list. It started simple. Cancel her access to the house. Freeze joint accounts. Secure documentation for Ridgeway LLC. Inform Tess's husband, because yes, he existed, and no, I wasn't the only one being played. But item number 5? That was the crown jewel. Make sure she's still smiling when I take everything away. Because I didn't want revenge that looked like a tantrum. I wanted precision, elegance, something so airtight that even her twisted little brain would have to respect it. The opportunity came faster than expected. Every May, Margaret's company, her real job, not her Ridgeway fantasy, hosted a regional leadership conference. Think breakout rooms, cheap coffee, forced enthusiasm. Margaret loved it. It was the one time a year she got to be the face of her team. Name badges, applause, microphones, her favorite things in the world, aside from James apparently. The Thursday after I confronted her, I got an email. An auto-forward from our old shared inbox. Dear Andrew and Margaret Wilburn, we're thrilled to confirm your registration as a featured couple for this year's Partnerships and Practice panel. I nearly spit out my coffee. Featured couple. She had signed us up. Weeks ago, probably. Before I knew about Ridgeway, before I knew she was running her little side hustle/affair on the company's dime. And now? She was supposed to speak with me in front of 200 people about building a strong personal and professional partnership. Beautiful. I didn't cancel. Instead, I made a call to Rachel Stokes, the conference coordinator. Told her Margaret and I were still attending, but I'd be presenting solo. She had a conflict, I said, which wasn't technically a lie, but I've prepared remarks. I think it'll still be valuable. Rachel was thrilled. We love hearing a husband's perspective, she said. Oh, you're gonna love this one, Rachel. The panel was scheduled for Friday, 2 p.m., in one of those too cold hotel ballrooms where the carpet looks like a migraine and the lights make everyone look vaguely damp. I wore a navy blazer. Nothing flashy. Just enough to look trustworthy. I sat at a long table with a mic, a glass of water, and a laptop with a single slide deck titled Transparency, What Partnership Really Requires. The audience settled in. A few people looked confused that Margaret wasn't up there. Her name was still printed on the little card in front of the other seat. I tapped the mic. Hey everyone, I started, casual but focused. I'm Andrew Wilburn. Margaret won't be joining us today. She has other professional commitments. A few polite laughs. A few raised eyebrows. I want to talk today about partnership. Real partnership. The kind that doesn't get written in LinkedIn posts or plastered on smiling stock photos. I want to talk about the part no one advertises. I clicked the remote. First slide. 3 things you should never hide from a partner. Debt. Secrets. Shell companies you start with a man named James while pretending to volunteer. The room didn't know whether to laugh or panic. I kept going. See, I thought Margaret and I were building a life together. Mortgage, shared calendar, monthly budget meetings, the usual. But turns out, she was building something else. Something called Ridgeway Collaborative. Click. Slide 2. Ridgeway Collaborative, a case study in infidelity masquerading as strategic planning. I saw 2 women in the second row gasp. One of them clearly knew Margaret. I kept going. For months, while I was balancing home repairs, job stress, and wondering why she was so tired all the time, my wife was co-founding an LLC with a man she listed as consulting partner, but referred to in private letters with a much more intimate tone. Click. Slide 3. How I found out, spoiler alert, it wasn't her phone. I'd like to thank the Canon office printer, without whom this revelation would not have been possible. That got actual laughs. People relaxed. A little. The damage was already done. I didn't name names beyond James Holloway. I didn't need to. Anyone who mattered already knew who she was. I didn't shout. I didn't insult. I simply laid out the facts, like a well-researched expose. I even cited sources. When I was done, I stood up and said, in conclusion, transparency isn't optional. And if your partner hides a whole second life from you, the real question is, what were they planning to do with it before you found out? Then I walked off stage to actual applause. Rachel Stokes caught me by the coffee table afterward, white as a ghost. Andrew, I had no idea. You weren't supposed to, I said. Neither was I. But I wasn't done yet. That night, I filed a formal report to Margaret's employer using her own HR compliance form. I didn't embellish. I just attached the LLC documentation, the secret bank accounts, and the fact that she'd failed to disclose her business relationship with a known associate during work-sponsored events. Then I mailed an anonymous packet to the state's nonprofit regulation board because Ridgeway had filed for a 501(c)(3) tax status 6 months earlier, and I knew for a fact that none of the money was going where it was supposed to. Last, I delivered a manila envelope to Tessa's husband. Left it on his porch with a note. She didn't just betray me. Good luck. Inside were screenshots, meeting rosters, bank account logs, photos of James and Margaret entering that office together, timestamps, everything. I didn't include a return address. Didn't need to. And the final cherry? I hired a CPA to audit our finances from the last 24 months. Every shared account, every hidden transaction. When the divorce papers arrived, already drafted by the time she called me that Monday, I included an itemized list of everything I was entitled to reclaim. The same day she tried to file her own paperwork, she found out the house had already been signed into a trust, my trust. The mortgage? Paid off early using our shared account, but under my name. Margaret didn't see it coming. Because Margaret never thought I was capable of this kind of revenge. She thought I was the type to sit in silence, lick my wounds, and keep the peace for the sake of dignity. She was half right. I did keep the peace. But I didn't stay quiet. And I didn't let her win. She picked the worst possible time. It had been 2 weeks since the conference, the public unraveling, the HR report, the emails, the calls from people we knew who had no idea. Apparently, Margaret had taken a leave of absence from her job. Something about mental wellness, which was rich coming from a woman who ran 2 lives with the efficiency of a Swiss watch and the emotional availability of a vending machine. I was at the house one evening going over paperwork when she finally decided to show up. No warning. No call. Just the quiet crunch of tires on gravel and the click of the front door, which she still had a key to, not for long, mind you. I was in the kitchen. She walked in like it was any other Tuesday. Jeans, cardigan, not a trace of makeup. Playing the civilian. The shell-shocked ex-wife-to-be who just wanted to talk. Hi, she said. Quiet. Calculated. I poured myself a glass of water and didn't offer her one. You've been busy, she said, glancing around. Conference. HR. The trust. You really don't. I cut in, voice flat. Don't start this with small talk. Just say what you came to say. She paused, blinked once like she was getting into character, then stepped further into the room. I didn't come to fight. You didn't come to win, either. That part's over. Her jaw tensed, and for the first time since this mess began, I saw a flicker of something almost like fear. Not sadness. Not regret. Just the creeping awareness that her control had expired and no one had renewed the subscription. She pulled out a chair at the table and sat like she still belonged in the room. You made me look like a lunatic. No, I said. You made you look like a lunatic. I just gave people subtitles. Her eyes flashed. You humiliated me in front of my colleagues. You mean the same colleagues you lied to? Who you told we were this strong, thriving couple while you were filing invoices under a shell company you shared with the guy you were sleeping with. I didn't yell. Didn't need to. The quiet was sharper. Margaret looked down at her hands, rubbed her thumb over the edge of her ring finger where the wedding band used to be. I don't know if she even realized she was doing it. What we had, she started, and already I could feel my eyes roll internally, was never as solid as you thought. I gave a dry laugh. Sure. That's why you stayed. Why you said yes when I asked you to marry me. Why you moved into this house, helped pick the curtains, and hosted wine nights with couples you hated. Because it was never that solid. She met my gaze. I stayed because I didn't know how to leave. No, I said, standing. You stayed because I made your life convenient. Because I covered the boring parts. The bills, the yard work, the car inspections. You got to pretend you were building something meaningful while I did the maintenance. Her voice dropped. It wasn't meaningless. You started a second life, Margaret. You created a fake company. You funneled money into it, set up a relationship with a man you never even told me about, and you made me your alibi every Tuesday night like I was some clueless sitcom husband who just wanted to watch sports and eat leftovers. She looked like she wanted to respond, but I wasn't done. You didn't cheat because you were unfulfilled. You cheated because you're a coward. Because you'd rather keep things tidy and functional while you chase whatever version of excitement you think you deserve. Margaret swallowed. And you're what? The hero? No, I said. I'm the idiot who thought loyalty would eventually earn me the truth. Spoiler, it doesn't. The silence stretched. She shifted in her seat, probably wondering if she could pivot to victimhood. But I beat her to it. I read the emails, by the way. The ones you deleted from your Ridgeway account. James had a wife. Tessa knew. You all played each other like it was a networking event. Andrew, do you know what's funny? I said, voice rising just slightly. You spent months treating me like a dull background character, and the moment I flipped the script, you act like I'm the one who blew everything up. She had the gall to look hurt. You could have just asked me, she said. About Ridgeway. About James. Oh, yeah? When? Before or after the fake letters? The money orders? The nonprofit status you used to hide an emotional affair under legal paperwork. I walked around the table and stood behind her chair. She flinched, not because I was threatening, but because she couldn't predict what was next. That's what scared her. I leaned down slightly. You lost the right to explanations the moment you decided I didn't need to know. Then I walked to the door. You should leave now. She stood slowly. We built a life together, Andrew. You're throwing it away over a mistake. No, I said, opening the door. You made 100 decisions. This isn't a mistake. It's a blueprint. She hesitated in the threshold. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem anymore. She stepped out into the cool evening air. I didn't watch her get in the car. Didn't wave. Didn't ask her to stay. I closed the door. Then I locked it. I didn't burn her things. I didn't delete photos. I didn't write some dramatic healing post on Facebook. I didn't join a men's group or buy a motorcycle or grow a breakup beard. You know what I did? I cleaned out the garage. 46 linear feet of dusty shelving, dead extension cords, and mismatched screws in a peanut butter jar. It took 4 hours and 3 trash bags. And the whole time, I didn't think about Margaret. Not once. Not on purpose. I just didn't need to. My body finally caught up to what my brain already knew. She wasn't coming back. More importantly, I didn't want her to. It's funny how quiet a house can be when nobody's lying in it. Margaret moved out officially 3 weeks after the final conversation. She sent a courier for the rest of her things. Didn't even knock. Just a guy in cargo pants who said, Wilburn, and hauled out 4 labeled boxes like we were shipping her off to storage. No note. No call. Nothing in handwriting. There wasn't anything left to say. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Clean split. No kids, no pets, no property battle. She didn't fight me on the trust or the house or the money. I think she thought if she made it easy, she'd look like less of a villain. She's always been good at rewriting narratives. But the real story had already been published, and not just at that conference. Her world had gotten smaller. The nonprofit gig? Gone. IRS flagged it during an unrelated audit. Tessa's husband filed for divorce and went public. James's real wife, a middle school principal, no less, called my office and thanked me for giving her what she needed to finally leave. Apparently, Margaret was just one branch of a whole network of James's side projects. It all fell apart like a Jenga tower after the wrong move. And me? I bought a pressure washer. Hear me out. There's something stupidly satisfying about blasting grime off a sidewalk. It doesn't fix your soul or give you closure or whatever, but it gives you lines. Clear ones. You can see the progress. Clean, dirty. Before, after. The week after she left, I used that pressure washer on everything. The deck, the driveway, the fence out back. I erased years of weather, rot, and mildew in neat, sweeping arcs. And when I got done, I realized something. I liked being alone. Not in the bitter, I don't need anyone ever again kind of way. Just in the honest, adult kind of way. Where I didn't have to wonder if the silence in the room was real peace or just the space between someone else's lies. I started cooking again. Real cooking, not survival meals. I called my sister every Sunday. We hadn't talked this regularly since before Margaret decided family dinners were a chore. I got rid of the guest towels no one ever used. Donated Margaret's reading chair that she never once sat in. Turned the Ridgeway folder over to a friend in legal, pro bono, and never checked in on what happened after. Not because I didn't care. Because I was full. Not angry. Not empty. Just done. And you know what I don't do anymore? Apologize for being the guy who didn't see it coming. I used to beat myself up for not noticing the signs sooner, the lies, the fake schedules, the way she was always just a little too busy to be real. But I realize now, it's not weakness to trust someone. It's not foolish to build something steady while someone else builds a trapdoor underneath it. What's foolish is staying there once you find the hatch. Margaret always used to say I was too decent for my own good. Like it was an insult. Like I should be embarrassed that I didn't know how to be ruthless. But it turns out, being decent doesn't make you weak. It just makes you slow to anger and fast when you finally decide to move. I've moved. Literally, too. Last month I sold the house. Packed up everything I wanted and left the rest for the realtors. Took the pressure washer with me, though. Some things you don't leave behind. Now I rent a little two-bedroom a few towns over. It's nothing fancy. Just mine. I built a workbench in the garage. Started a side project refinishing old furniture, not for money, just because I like the feeling of sanding something down and making it better than it was. There's no big redemption arc. No love interest waiting in the wings. No voiceover saying, and that's how I found happiness again. That's not how life works. Sometimes you don't get closure. You get clarity. And if I'm being honest, clarity's better. Because it lets you breathe. It lets you stop spinning your wheels wondering what you did wrong, or what you could have done better, or if maybe they'll wake up one day and realize what they lost. Margaret won't. Because Margaret doesn't miss things. She replaces them. And I'm not something you replace. I'm the thing you regret when your replacement falls apart. She'll figure that out eventually. Or maybe not. Doesn't matter. I've got clean sidewalks, quiet mornings, and a shed that smells like sawdust and peace. That's enough. That's better than anything we ever had. And I didn't have to lie to get it. I just had to walk out the door and never look back. And subscribe to the channel